I hope, Mr. Chair, dahil pangalawang taon na ito ng panunungkulan ni VP, at least in the next budget hearings, we can hear more specific and distinct mandates of the OVP kaysa lamang in support of yung mandates ng OP. Ngayon naman po, Madam VP, Mr. Chair, the Office of the Vice President has been allocated confidential funds amounting to 500 million pesos. According to Joint Circular Number 2015-01, issued by the COA, DBM, DILG, CGC, GCG, and DND, confidential funds refer to those expenses related to surveillance activities in civilian government agencies that are intended to support the mandate or operations of that agency. So, una pong tanong dito, Madam Vice President, which mandates of the Office of the Vice President will be supported by the aforementioned allocation of the confidential funds, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, all of the projects of the Office of the Vice President use the confidential funds. It is intended for the safe, secure, and successful implementations of programs, projects, and activities and engagements of me and all the satellite offices, including the central office of the Office of the Vice President.
Salamat kayo, Madam VP. Kanina po sabi nyo yung primary mandates ng office nyo in the next 6 years would be in support of the primary mandates of the OP. So, alin po sa mga primary mandates na yon, as you conceive them in support of the primary mandates of the OP, alin sa mga primary mandates na yon ang masusuportahan or specifically gagastosan ng confidential funds na i-allocate ng Kongreso sa office nyo?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, the constitutional mandate of the Office of the Vice President is only to be a reserve, a bench warmer, in the event of, I do not want to mention it, but in the event that the President cannot discharge his functions. That is the constitutional mandate of the Office of the Vice President. Apart from that, all the other projects of the Office of the Programs, Projects, and Activities of the Office of the Vice President will depend largely on the decision and discretion of the incumbent elected Vice President. So for my term, we decided on 3 permanent projects: the charter, the museum, and the permanent office and residence of the Office of the Vice President. And then we took on the projects that made the most impact when I was mayor of Davao City. These are the entrepreneurship program, the peace building in communities, the Pagbabago advocacy campaign. We added the Pagbabago, 1 million trees for in support of the mandate of the DNR. And then we have the Pansarap program in support of the Department of Health and the Department of Education. And then we created the Disaster Operations Center in support of NDRIMC and all those local governments who are asking for help from the Office of the Vice President when there are calamities or emergencies in their localities. And the buses donated to me, I lent to the Office of the Vice President to support the Libreng Sakay program of the national government. In addition to that, I discharge the functions and the duties of the Secretary of the Department of Education. And in addition to that, I was tasked by the President to co-chair the National Task Force on Ending Local Communist NTF-LCAC. And in addition to that, I also took on the role of President of the Southeast Asian Education Ministers Organization, SIMEO. And all of these activities use confidential funds.
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice President, so nasagot nyo na yung follow-up question ko. Kung ibig nyo pong sabihin, lahat nito, starting with the bench warming and being a reserve, and then yung entrepreneurship program, yung peace building, yung pansarap, yung million trees, yung pagbabago advocacy, yung disaster operations center, yung libreng sakay, and yung binanggit nyong 3 permanent projects, the permanent office, the VP's museum, and the omnibus law or charter, bawat isa sa mga ito gagastusan ng confidential funds ng opisina nyo?
Yes. Mainly, the confidential funds, as I said, is for the safe, secure, and successful implementations of the programs, projects, and activities and engagements of the Office of the Vice President.
Go ahead, thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. In addition, Mr. Chair, Your Honors, in addition, there are times when the president is on official trips, travel abroad. I chair the executive committee, which is the caretaker of the Office of the Vice President. This is an additional dagdag trabaho sa lahat ng mga trabaho na na-mention ko po.
Of course, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice President, yung ibang items na binanggit ni Madam VP na gagastusan di umano ng confidential funds, specifically ng OVP, tulad ng sa DepEd, sa NTF-LCAC, sa CIMEO, pati yung executive committee pag wala si Presidente, malamang sa hindi, may sariling confidential funds na hindi na ginagastusan ng confidential funds na hinihingi ng Office of the Vice President. So, Madam Chair, VP, Mr. Chair, furthermore, the joint circular I cited provides that confidential funds can only be used for a limited range of purposes, such as the rental of transport activities related to confidential activities. So in broad terms po, saang mga activities na enumerated sa joint circular gagamitin yung confidential funds? Just to refresh our memory, dun po sa 2015 joint resolution na yon, confidential funds can only be used for the following expenses: purchase of information necessary for the formulation and implementation of programs, activities, and projects relevant to national security and peace and order, rental of transport vehicles related to confidential activities, rentals and the incidental expenses related to the maintenance of safe houses, purchase or rentals of supplies, materials, and equipment for confidential operations that cannot be done through regular procedures without compromising the information gathering activity concerned, payment of rewards to informers, and uncovering and preventing illegal activities that pose a clear and present danger to agency personnel or property or other facilities and resources under the agency protection, done in coordination with appropriate law enforcement agencies. So, saang mga activities po na ito enumerated sa joint circular ay gagastusan ng confidential funds ng office nyo, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, it varies. Not all the activities are the same for each day and each month. The liquidation of the confidential funds includes the enumeration of the use the Office of the Vice President. The confidential funds report, the joint memorandum circular requires the confidential fund report submission to the Office of the Vice President, the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the Commission on Audit. And we submitted the list of activities to these offices.
Thank you, Madam VP, Mr. Chair. I'll get to the liquidation end report also later. So just to clarify, Madam VP, since confidential funds refer to those agencies related to surveillance activities undertaken by civilian government agencies, ibig po bang sabihin na yung opisina ninyo will be gathering intelligence on certain subjects or entities in support sa inyong mandates o mga operasyon, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, that is correct. As an example, we did surveillance of complaints from constituents in Bulacan with regard to the selling of OVP assistance and the selling of tupad projects in Bulacan. And there was a surveillance operation that was run by the VP SPG for about a month, and we were able to apprehend the person, and we were able to successfully prosecute the case, and that person went to jail for ilang months?
6 months. Recent.
For 6 months. So that is an example of the surveillance activities that is conducted by the VP SPG for the projects and activities of the Office of the Vice President. It was in Bulacan.
Salamat kaayo, Madam VP. I ask this because the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency was established to direct, coordinate, and integrate national intelligence activities. And this includes the collation of intelligence gathered from various sources. So we'd like more information as to the intelligence operations of the OVP. Sa aling mga sources magagather ng impormasyon yung OVP? Kukuha ba kayo ng intelligence mula sa ating mga existing intelligence services tulad ng NICA o tulad ng DND at PNP?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, no. Intelligence starts with the communities and the stakeholders, and then if there are complaints, and then it is built up through intelligence and surveillance services, and then a dossier or a report is started, and then it goes through levels through the Office of the Vice President and VP SPG. So we do not seek intelligence reports from other government agencies, but the intelligence reports starts from the ground in the communities that that are engaged by the Office of the Vice President.
Salamat kayo, Madam VP. Actually, I'll get to that process also in a bit. Dahil meron pong established na intelligence cycle at meron pong established na chain of command for the intelligence activities ng ating gobyerno at ng ating republika. And sa pagkaalam ko po, walang hiwalay na chain of command for Intel ang OVP. In fact, ang susunod kong tanong how can your honorable office, paano nyo po maa-assure yung mga miyembro nitong komite na yung collection ng intel ng inyong opisina hindi magre-resulta sa redundancy or duplication of effort?
There is no redundancy and duplication of effort because we have different mandates from the other government agencies.
Indeed, Mr. Chair, Madam VP, different mandates. And kanina, nilista nyo na po yung iba't ibang mandates ng OVP. Meron din pong klarong at complementary mandate ang intelligence community ng gobyerno sa ating bansa. And as I had been saying since last year's budget debates, we should leave intelligence to the experts, just as we leave education to the DepEd and we leave the mandates of the OVP to the OVP. Ano po ba yung magiging subjects ng OVP intelligence gathering operations? Ano yung mga intensyon at capabilities ng mga subjects na ito na kailangan ng OVP ng intelligence on this? At paano nitong mga subjects tinathreaten yung operations ng OVP?
Just to inform
Yes,
the
Mr. Chair.
good Deputy Minority, just 2 minutes left. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Halos tamang-tama po. I just have 4 last questions after this one. At kung maubusan ng oras, I can put the last 2 or so questions on record para sa OVP and the good chair. Salamat, Mr. Chair.
Yes, the confidential funds is used for the safe, secure, and successful implementations of the projects, programs, and activities and engagements of the Office of the Vice President.
Sino po yung subjects? Ano yung intentions at capabilities ng mga subjects? At paano tinetrete ng mga subjects na to yung mga operasyon ng OVP?
This is for the successful, safe, secure, and successful implementation of the projects, programs, and activities and engagements of the Office of the Vice Presidents. If the question is the subjects on who are the sources, we cannot divulge who are the sources of intel information. We can just say that these are the stakeholders in the areas where there are engagements of the Office of the Vice President.
Hindi po sources, Madam VP, pero yung mga taong o grupong ginagatheran nyo ng opisina nyo ng intelligence.
Yes, those that are perceived to be threats in the successful, safe, and secure implementation of the PPAs.
Salamat, Madam VP. Mr. Chair, I'll need to follow up.
I'll give me my 5 minutes.
Oh, salamat, Mr. Chair. Salamat, Madam VP, Mr. Chair. I'll need to pursue that in greater detail than is being made available right now. Doon na lang po sa plenary. Madam VP, paano po ire-recruit ng OVP at ite-train yung mga intelligence operatives at agents na kakailanganin ng office para i-gather yung impormasyon para sa intelligence collection plan? Hanggang saang extent magre-rely ang OVP sa HUMINT at sa CGINT para sa information collection requirements ng office?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chair, Your Honor, the Vice Presidential Security and Protection Group coordinate with the Philippine National Police and the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Unfortunately, however, the commander of the VP SPG is not present here this morning.
Salamat kayo, Madam VP. So, dun sa sagot na ang VP SPG coordinates with the PNP and AFP, ibig po bang sabihin ang OVP ang magre-recruit and train na mga operatives at ahente, or yung PNP at AFP ang magte-train sa mga operatives at ahente ng OVP?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, unfortunately, I cannot answer the question. The commander of the VP SPG, we failed to include him in the list of the resource persons this morning.
I'll
Can,
yes, Mr. Chair.
maybe we can, if you can put your questions in writing, we could submit it to the Office of the Vice President, and maybe, if possible, if they, because some of these matters are quite sensitive, so you can give them in executive session, or you can give them in a sealed envelope in writing. That's at your pleasure, Madam Vice President. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, we can easily do that. We can ask them to submit to the Secretariat of this committee.
Salamat kayo, Madam VP, and salamat, Mr. Chair. I look forward to that information to be submitted in writing to the committee through the chair. And I'm glad na marinig tungkol sa coordination sa PNP at AFP dahil sila yung dalawa sa primary na halimbawa na may expertise sa Intel at may mandate sa Intel at gumaganap ng ganyang mga mandates in coordination with civilian agencies, including the OVP. And I look forward also, Mr. Chair, dun sa mga sagot tungkol sa HUMINT at CGINT na gagamitin either ng OVP or OVP in coordination with PNP and AFP. At Madam VP, paano i-collate ng OVP, isa-store, ika-catalog, isa-search through yung intelligence na kukolektahin? At anong IT infrastructure ang kakailanganin ng office nyo para sa purpose na ito?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, these are confidential matters which we cannot divulge in open session. Thank you.
So if possible, Madam VP, Mr. Chair, maisubmit din in writing to the committee through the chair?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, yes. Thank you.
Salamat kayo. And then, paano po ini-intend ng OVP na i-process tapos i-analyze yung impormasyon na kukolektahin para mag-produce ng actionable intelligence? Kakailangan nyo na bang i-outsource yung parteng ito ng intelligence cycle o magde-develop ba ang office ng capability in-house?
Um, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, we can ask the VP SPG to include that in their report. The VP SPG are composed of personnel from the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police, and some of them are trained in intelligence gathering and are part of intel units from the PNP and AFP. There are no civilian members in the VP SPG. Thank you.
Madam VP, paano po i-adjust ng OVP yung operations ninyo bilang resulta ng intelligence na makokolekta, ma-analyze at saka ma-disseminate?
We adjust according to the recommendations and the assessment of the VP SPG with regard to their appreciation of the intel information.
Salamat, Madam VP. And yung parte nga pong yun na nag-a-adjust ang VP SPG, or rather, nag-a-adjust ang buong opisina dun sa rekomendasyon ng VP SPG, I presume bunga na rin ang coordination nila dun sa PNP at AFP. Again, isang konkretong halimbawa na yung primary mandates para sa intelligence cycle, yung buong intelligence cycle, ay nakalodge dun sa intelligence agencies, including in the armed services ng ating gobyerno. At yung OVP, kahit through the VP-SPG, ay pumapasok dun sa endpoint nung cycle na yon paggamit ng intelligence. Dun nga sa sinabi ninyo na pag-adjust ayon sa recommendations ng VP-SPG. Just returning again to one of my original points since last year na iwan natin ang intelligence sa experts dun sa intelligence agencies ng gobyerno in the same way na yung mga civilian agencies ng gobyerno, whether OVP itself or kahit DepEd, ay kumbaga shop nila yung kanilang mandates at yung kanilang expertise. Huling tanong na lang po, Madam VP, Mr. Chair, yung activities na binanggit ng VP kanina, hindi po ba part na rin ng regular law enforcement work na yung mga law enforcement agencies natin ay ginagawa na rin?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, we have different mandates from the other government agencies. So our intelligence, our confidential funds are used according to Joint Circular 2015-01. And whatever we gather from our confidential funds and surveillance, we share it with mainly the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police, as well as they share as well intelligence information that they gather, which are not included in our database. Thank you.
Thank you kaayo, Madam VP. I'm